our castle walls. Fast forward to the siren in the distance, getting closer by the minute. Will you stand and answer to the call? Run like a fire, willful and wild. This is the night that you were made for. Don't close your eyes, safer to stare into the sun than to turn away from what you could become. This was once a perfect symphony, soft and steady like a heartbeat. But these notes turn dissonant and sour, getting violently devoured. So will you stand or let the curtain fall? Burn like a fire, willful and wild. This is the night that you were made for. Don't close your eyes, safer to stare into the sun than to turn away from what you could become. The time has come to stand and fight for what you believe, for what you believe. The dark will fall and we will rise. Like a fire, willful and wild. This is the night you were made for. Burn like a fire. This is the night that you were made for. Don't close your eyes, safer to stare into the sun than to turn away from what you could be. The time has come to stand and fight. Deconstruct, reignite. Safer to stare into the sun than to turn away from what you could become.
Nineteen rounds of full throttle action are complete, with tonight crowning our regular season champion, ending the regular season and beginning the 2023 version of the playoffs. Welcome to RaceSpotTV's coverage of the Full Throttle Real Sim Racing Cup Series from the virtual Daytona International Speedway in Daytona Beach, Florida. We're happy that you're spending your Monday night with us as we get ready to go racing from the virtual high banks of the Daytona International Speedway. I'm your host, Joshua Lee. I'll be with you here in the broadcast booth all night long, bringing you coverage of what is our final regular season event of the 2023 season. And there is a lot on the line and a lot to play for. Let's get right down to business, as right now we have 13 drivers that will compete to try and be a Full Throttle Real Sim Racing Cup Series champion. However, we still have 3 names that we need to lock in, and those drivers that I just mentioned are all locked in for various reasons. Agnell Phillip locked in for his 3 wins. He's going for his 2nd championship in a row. Matt Danson with 2 wins. Cody Harris, Michael O'Raya, Thomas George, and Sean Casto all reaching the minimum participation requirements, as well as reaching the top 25 in points and grabbing that win to be eligible for the playoffs. Back from there, we have Ross Cato, Grant Davis, Michael Johnson, Bradley Burke, William Schmidt, Sam Nieto, and Brandon Fetterplace all locked in on points. They cannot lose their spots inside of the top 16, so they will also be competing in our first round of the playoffs. Then back from there, we have a couple of names that are sitting on solid ground, but still have a little bit more work to do tonight. Mainly Tom Wetmore. He is about 2 points short of locking himself in on points in the playoffs. Right now, the maximum amount of points that a driver can get in this race is 42. So that 41 points does not make him safe just yet. We'll see what he can do tonight here at the virtual Daytona International Speedway. But Steve Tucker, some solid ground there, 30 points to the good. Eric Papanow right on that bubble, only 6 points keeping him afloat right now, and that is not solid ground for him to be standing on. You got Carl Pooler on the outside looking in, same with Jaron Weinmaster, Brett Pancari, Minazzi Major, and Ryan Dunkelberger. Now, Pooler, Weinmaster, and Pancari all have opportunities to lock themselves in on points as well, depending on how those drivers inside of the cut line do. But back from there, Minazzi Major, Ryan Dunkelberger, both in must-win situations. Alexander Light, Richard Wolsifer, and Richard Woodruff can also win and get into the playoffs. However, they are also going to need to get inside of the top 25 in points in order to be eligible. So watch for them to try and get a good points night as well as win the race to lock themselves into the playoffs. As we go through the next 10 weeks of racing before we reach the Championship 4 finale in Phoenix, let's take a look at where we are going to be going. Starting after we're done with the Daytona International Speedway, next Monday night, we start at Darlington, then to Kansas, Bristol to end off the round of 16, Texas, Talladega, and the Charlotte Roval for the round of 12, Las Vegas, Homestead, and Martinsville rounding out the round of 8, and then that Championship 4 round when we crown our champion in Phoenix. But tonight's battleground is none other than the world famous Daytona International Speedway, known as the world center of racing, and that is a perfect way to describe it. Racing anything from motorcycles to Supercross, IMSA in the 24 hours of Daytona, the Daytona 500, and all 4 national levels of NASCAR racing. This track is known for just about a little bit of everything, and we're going to see a little bit of everything on the track tonight as we go racing in the final round of the regular season. And we join in our drivers in qualifying, and at the moment, sitting top of the board is that number 9 machine right there at Jaron Weinmaster as he comes across the line and ends out his lap. We continue watching now with Matt Danson in the number 58. Now, all night long, as we take a look at our timing tower, you'll be able to tell where each of our playoff drivers, whether eligible or ineligible, are running tonight. Those ineligible drivers will not be highlighted, or they're drivers that are still sitting outside the top 25. They're going to need both a win and to get inside the top 25 in order to get. Those drivers highlighted in blue are must-win situations already inside of the top 25. The drivers in pink are the ones that are on the bubble. They can either get in on points or they can get in via the win tonight. And those drivers highlighted in red are locked in. They are racing in the RealSimRacing Cup Series playoffs in 2023. One final race to round out the season, and there goes Tom Wetmore in the number 51, grabbing that 4th spot on the speed charts. Matt Danson is going to try and get across the line, but I don't think he's going to get there. He won't. So Danson is not going to get a time in qualifying. Danson is going to start all the way at the back of the field. That is huge for the number 38 from down under, Matt Danson. But as qualifying wraps up, we can take a look at your starting grid brought to you by Get Wet Sports. Jaron Weinmaster will be on the pole position. And how about Minazzi Major, the driver that needs to win in order to get into the playoffs, is going to be there on the outside of the front row. Ross Cato, Tom Wetmore are going to share the second row with Grant Davis and Agnell Phillip rounding out your top 6. Back from there, it's Steve Tucker, Michael Araya sharing the 4th row and rounding out your top 8. Brandon Fetterplace and Michael Johnson will be through to the top 10. Cody Harris, Sam Nieto going to round out the first 12 positions, with Thomas George, Brett Pancari, and Richard Woodruff through to the top 15. It's Sean Kalis, Eric Papanow, and Braden Whitaker rounding out the first 9 rows. From there, it's Carl Pooler, Richard Wolsifer that are going to share the 10th row. Nick Mara, Mike Kaczynski sharing row 11. Gregory Shaw and Bradley Burke are going to share the 12th row on the grid. Almost to the end of their 30 drivers that are looking to take part in tonight's race, with Landon Mills, Matt Danson, Eric Stanford, Sean Casto, William Schmidt, and Tom Morano. That was your Get Wet Sports starting grid. GetWetSports.com is the world's first digital content library that showcases and celebrates creators of all sizes and backgrounds, including iRacing, military gamers, and women in gaming. Getting listed is free. Find out more at GetWetSports.com and start on your content creation journey today. We'll go racing for 80 laps, exactly half the distance of the real-world NASCAR Cup Series race from Saturday night. Of course, as always, fixed setup. 4 tire sets remain in the pit lane for all of our drivers. No fast repairs, and that 3 overtime attempts will become important. Last time we were here for a playoff cutoff race in August, we ended up with a record-setting 9 cautions around the Daytona International Speedway, the most ever at Daytona in RSR competition. Past winners, it's a bit of a mixed bag, especially as you see that tidbit down at the bottom there. No repeat winners here in the last 14 races. The only driver to win repeat at the Daytona International Speedway in RSR competition is Anthony DeBarro. Nobody has been able to do it since. Will we see somebody be able to do it today? Field pacing 30 cars deep behind the official iRacing pace car as we get ready to go racing from the Daytona International Speedway. A lot on the line for tonight's playoffs, a lot on the line as we try and set 16 drivers that will go racing for a championship. Can anybody add their name into those 16? And what is going to happen as we go racing around the high banks of Daytona? Green flag is in the air, and we are racing for round 20 of the Full Throttle Real Sim Racing Cup Series and the regular season finale. Field works their way up to full song for the first time tonight here at the Daytona International Speedway. Already 2x2 with Jaron Weinmaster getting a little bit out in front. He's got Ross Cato behind for a little bit of help, but leading that outside line. That's Grant Davis, and we're already getting antsy mid-pack. I think that was Cody Harris in the 28. I was trying to find an opening, could not find said opening, and now they'll rest their way back to 2 wide after almost chancing to a little bit of 3 wide to start off the evening. Everybody knowing it's going to be a long night here from the Daytona International Speedway, so that outside line is going to try and gain some momentum, but not exactly important just yet for that outside line to be super formed up as Jaron Weinmaster tries to command the bottom line right now and try and command the race from down there, and we already got a spin in the back. Drivers involved include the 71 of Carl Pooler, cut line driver, involved in the first wreck on lap number 3. Back from there, Eric Stanford's involved, Nicholas Mara's in it. And that was a hectic way to start tonight's race on lap number 3. We sit under the yellow flag for the first time this evening. What happened there is the field was on their way out of the tri-oval. It looked like it was one of those traditional Daytona wrecks. Yeah, it was exactly that. An accordion effect on the inside. blended right up the racetrack, involving a solid number of cars there. Nobody claiming the wreck just yet. We'll see if somebody ends up doing that. But it started, I'm not sure exactly where. It was up in the pack around the 71. I think it was the 37 checking up on the inside line. That was Eric Papanow. He checked up slightly, and that ended up leading to that accordion effect that led to that incident. Let's go a little bit closer onto Eric Papanow and that number 37. Because that was just an accordion effect on the inside that unfortunately led to our first caution of the night on lap 3. There's the checkup. There's Pooler getting pushed back into the car behind him. And then it blended up the racetrack, involving Braden Whitaker. The 43 of Sean Kalis getting some damage from that one. You can see that front right tire locked up. Bradley Burke luckily missing a good majority of it. I think Landon Mills with a little bit of damage. He was our winner from here last year in the August race. But most notably is that Grant Davis actually did end up taking the lead with a solid head of steam on the outside line off of the first time through the tri-oval there. So he is now your current race leader as we get started on the night here from the virtual Daytona International Speedway. A couple of drivers making their way into the pit lane. Looks like majority of the field going to make their way into the pit lane to start off tonight's action. Grant Davis leads a whole host of cars into the pit lane for the first time down in the pits tonight. Staying out, Jaron Winemaster, Ross Cato, Manatzi Major, Steve Tucker, Gregory Shaw. First out of pit road is going to be, that was Brandon Fetterplace. It looked like a very, very equivalent stop for everybody in the pit lane tonight on the first set of pit stops, because we had pretty much everybody go in, grab fuel only, and now sit behind the official iRacing pace car, or sit behind those 5 drivers that stayed out under this yellow flag. Jaron Winemaster, Ross Cato, Manatzi Major, Steve Tucker, and Gregory Shaw all staying out. And tonight, we're going to be taking a look at those live point standings on that cut line for pretty much the entire night. And you can see already Eric Papanow falling below the top 16. Carl Pooler falling even further. So as we sit right now, Wetmore has that 16th spot. Steve Tucker has it as well, and a pretty considerable margin there on that cut line as well. So getting started in this race tonight, and that cut line has already gone a major shift. Manatzi Major running there in third. Solid start to the night for that number 82 Chevy Camaro. Needs to win tonight, has not run up front for the majority of this season, and honestly has had some struggling results, but now sits themselves in third and qualifying on the outside line as well. They are trying to command this race, which is pretty much exactly what Manatzi Major needs to do to walk away with the number 1 win for them in RSR competition and walk away with a spot in the playoffs. So first caution now wrapping its way up as the lights on the official iRacing pace car go out, and we get ready to go back to racing tonight. Field working their way into turn number 1. Nobody claiming that yellow flag. So that yellow flag will go unclaimed. It will go into admin review post-race. And now we sit with the field back to 2x2. We'll be going back to racing on to lap number 7 of 80 tonight. This race starting out a little bit like that race last August with 9 yellow flags totaling that regular season cut-off race from 2022. That race also ending under triple overtime and a yellow flag at the end of the race. One of the only RealSimRacing Cup Series events, at least to recent memory, where we ended under the yellow flag and not ending under the green. Now, happy to be joined by Dylan Coyle, who will be hopefully joining me for the remainder of our broadcast tonight. And Dylan, first caution already out of the way, but those first 3 laps, everybody was aggressive, getting up to speed. Are you expecting a little bit of the same as we get ready to go back to racing in the first restart of the evening? I think the technical problems are continuing on now as we will go back to racing, and hopefully we'll get Dylan Coyle dialed up so he can join me here in the broadcast booth. But where we sit right now is going back green with Jaron Weinmaster in control of the field. He hits the Geico restart zone, and we're already stacking up and we're wrecking. Ross Cato does not get moving off the start, and it's another big one. We pile it up in the tri-oval, and there is numerous cars in the infield. Cato did not get going, and on lap number 7, we're back under the yellow flag.
Did that just happen?
Oh, Dylan, that just happened, and welcome to the broadcast booth. Let's take a look at that replay, because that was... I don't want to call it on Cato now, but he just did not get going on the outside line.
Wow. I have no idea. I mean, tires aren't that worn. Shouldn't be too hard to get up to speed here. At this point in the race, let's catch this on board. Let's hear, too. It's weird.
He didn't even... I don't even know what to call it, because you know what it sounded like to me, Dylan? He was still at the pace speed. He never sped up.
That's just strange. I don't know. I don't know what happened there. I don't know if it was just a pressure thing or something, but...
Weinmaster started going. Cato did not follow. And that leads to a good solid handful of wadded up cars in the infield. We'll take a look. Let's go on board with Matt Danson involved in this wreck as well.
Yeah, let's check out what's going on. He's coming down the inside. Yeah, there's nowhere to go, and there's going to be a lot of cars coming down with just minimal damage, but still damage that should get repaired pretty much immediately. That was weird.
Well, definitely one of the weirder incidents I think we've especially seen this season of RSR competition. Jaron Weinmaster is going to bring it into the pit lane. That'll move Manazzi Major into the control car position. Nobody claiming responsibility for that wreck yet, and I'm still very interested to know just what happened to the 12 of Ross Cato. It didn't seem like there was any hardware issue. It almost just seemed like Weinmaster hit the loud pedal to get going in the Geico restart zone, and Cato just, I don't know if he was distracted. It seems very unlike Ross Cato, Dylan. I think that's why we're so dumbfounded that it actually happened.
Yeah, Ross is usually pretty sharp when it comes to the basics, right? So I'd like to think that it was just an honest mistake. Nothing. I don't even know. I don't know how that could have happened, to be honest. It's like when you see someone do something and you're like, nah, that's too easy, right? That's too obvious. They just didn't get onto the throttle. But yeah, that's weird.
I think if it was anybody else, I'd be fine saying, they just weren't paying attention. Leaders started to go and they kept the pace speed and stacked it up behind him. I gotta think there's something else that was in play there for Ross Cato, but all the drivers back from there getting involved in that incident as well. It's gonna shake up that point standings a little bit more. Brandon Betterplace actually losing a solid bit of points as he sits now P23. Should be locked in on points. Not much that he has to worry about yet, but Steve Tucker moves into that playoff cut line spot in 16th. Eric Papanow gaining a couple of spots. He's P17 after getting some damage repaired on this last pit stop. Carl Pooler involved in that first wreck. He is out of this race. So safe to say we will not be seeing Carl Pooler compete for a Full Throttle Real Sim Racing Cup Series championship. And then Jaron Weinmaster, who was leading that race before he brought it down into the pit lane, now sits P6, is still in that must-win situation, but has been showing some speed earlier on in this race for the at least handful of green laps that we've seen.
Now, taking a look at these live standings right here, is it with or without the removal of Gregory Shaw?
That is with the removal of Gregory Shaw.
Interesting. Someone's moved quite considerably, and that's Tucker, who's just jumped comfortably. Let me take a quick look at my calculations. I'm trying to see everything that I had going on too.
Well, Steve Tucker is still at least on the racetrack, so if he wants to gain a good amount of positions and gain a good amount of points, protect himself from being eliminated from that top 16, still on the racetrack. He sits P19, but we're back to 2x2, getting ready to go back to green. Nobody claiming that incident either. So the lap 3 incident will go unclaimed. Lap 7 incident will go unclaimed. Manatzi Major and Gregory Shaw are going to share the front row. Gregory Shaw, like you mentioned, Dylan, one of those drivers that was in the playoffs, did qualify with, I believe, a win earlier on this season, but unfortunately not going to be able to make our round of 16 races, so he forfeited his playoff position, moving a handful of positions up, but still has an opportunity to walk away with a win tonight.
Yeah, at the end of the day, you're still going for those wins, right? You're still trying to show each race is something. Each race has meaning. So even if you're not in the playoffs or you're, willingly giving up your spot for the playoffs, you still want to get those wins. But we'll see what happens here. 70 laps to go once we go back to green flag racing.
Looking to go back to green behind the official iRacing pace car. It pulls down. Geico restart zone, and we are back underway from Daytona. Shaw doesn't get moving that well on the outside. He'll get a shove from the reigning champ. Agnell Phillip behind. Grant Davis going to be on the back bumper of Manatzi Major as the field dives their way back to 1. Looking considerably smaller than what we started the night with, but as they roar their way through 1 and 2, get up to full song down the Daytona super stretch. It's the inside line that will prevail, with Shaw now having help from Jaron Weinmaster. Grant Davis going to look to the outside to try and get the lead.
That's a big run going down the outside. A big shove from the 56 of Richard Wilsifer. We'll see if that's able to keep hold. Grant Davis being shoved out to the lead on the outside, but the top line only has 4 cars hooked up at the moment. The 39 of Johnson trying to catch up.
Not a lot of places for the drivers further back in the pack to go right now, as Grant Davis will lead us across the start-finish line, utilizing that outside line. These next-gen cars on the iRacing service, Dylan, have kind of introduced a level of super speedway racing that we've seen in the real world since, I want to say, about 2013, and even beforehand back in the Gen 4s, using the outside line. We've seen in these next gens that outside line can be dominant if you get a lot of cars up there, and just not the same as it was in the Gen 6. Gen 6, you really needed a lot of cars, and it wasn't a viable line to do what Grant Davis is doing and try and protect the lead. Now it is, especially if you get formed up, and unfortunately those drivers kind of not getting formed up as well as they needed to, and Shaw's going to power back to the lead of the race on the inside.
Yeah, the inside now starting to get some momentum. Manatzi Major takes a peek to the outside, then back down to the inside. I feel like that shuffling is going to continue happening in this race. We've seen the aggression levels just start at 100 and stay at 100 in the very few green flag racing laps that we've had so far in this race. Right now, there's one main group. The first 18 cars from 19th to 24th is a smaller group, but I don't know how many cars are just damaged and back in that smaller group.
Good amount of cars are still in this race, or still at least running on the track, but they sit back here, and like you just mentioned, Dylan, kind of the damaged pack. Landon Mills, Braden Whitaker, Steve Tucker, Mike Kaczynski, all within this smaller group. Michael Araya, Tom Morano also here, as we go back to the battle for the race lead, which is now 2x2 all through this main pack. Thomas George on the inside, Manatzi Major on the outside, as they'll roar their way through turns 1 and 2. Everybody going to the back straightaway with Thomas George leading the fight, and the lap machine of Ross Cato in the 12 up ahead.
Oh, it's getting really violent with the shoving around the outside right now. A lot of lack of comfort. Davis, not liking how Minazzi Major was checking up, decides to go 3 wide and bring some cars around with him. Major is getting pushed to the middle and left out to dry, trying desperately to find somewhere to put his car that is not the middle.
That's not what Minazzi Major wanted to see or needed. They get shuffled all the way to the back of this pack. In a must-win situation, still, of course, a lot of time to go as the field works their way past the number 12 of Ross Cato up on the outside line. Thomas George leading the inside charge that is now the main charge. Good handful of drivers ducked out of that outside line, and now we've got a driver trying to peek at middle 3 wide. That's Tom Wetmore. That just doesn't seem to work that well in these next gens, Dylan, and you can see he kind of stalled that run out with no help, but now going to have the 56 of Richard Wolsifer to come to his back bumper. Now they're going to get a little bit squirrely back to the front straightaway.
Oh man, this is going to be intense. This is going to be one intense 80-lap race here at Daytona. I mean, how many cars do you think are going to be standing by the time we wave the checkered flag here?
I'm willing to bet we're still definitely not done wrecking, and I think we're not done with wrecking at least half this field, that we still have to go. But with Thomas George now leading the way, everybody has gotten their way to the bottom of the racetrack and wondering when that next run to the outside is going to come. It looks like Agnell Phillip maybe wanted to dance up there, but stays tucked in behind the number 6 Ford Mustang. Where we sit right now, I don't know if anybody is really willing to go to the outside. Thomas George is going to. Looks like he's done with leading the way. He's going to give it up to the 94, reigning champ Agnell Phillip.
Inside line is pretty dominant right now, but it switches every single lap, maybe every 2 laps. The outside just a little bit confused about what they want to do. Inside is right now, you know, just chilling right now. It's just a little bit more comfortable for everyone involved. You still see some drivers peeking their noses out to the left, to the right, trying to see what's going on up ahead if they should shuffle to another lane. But for the time being, everything is stable on the inside and now starting to stabilize a tiny bit on the outside. Hesitation there.
Yeah, well, we're getting already hectic in this pack again, but I've only ran 1 race at Daytona in these next gens, and it was last night in the final NIS fixed race of the weekend. And my first experience drafting these next gens, Dylan, it honestly felt like I was driving an Arkham Menard Series car in the pack at a Daytona or a Talladega, where there's no bubble of air in between these cars like we used to talk about with the Gen 6. It is just you're right on the back bumper of the driver in front of you, and you get runs very easy, and you need somewhere to take them. I mean, in the pack, middle of this line, I'm willing to bet if we had throttle telemetry from the likes of Michael Johnson, from the 51 of Tom Wetmore in the middle of this line, they'd be almost half throttle the entire way around this racetrack.
Yeah, half throttle for sure. I mean, it's interesting. If you saw anything from the Coke Zero Sugar 400 broadcast on NBC the other night, you'd see the pedal cam. They're not 100% down the whole way. I mean, that was a big thing that I think Brett Griffin's spotter for Chandler Smith was trying to get him to understand. You know, like sometimes you want to lift, sometimes you want to keep it fully floored down to the ground. You could save a lot of fuel that way if you're running mid-pack here at Daytona. Obviously, that could also be a little bit dangerous as there's a move down to the inside made on Matt Danson. New leader for a moment. It's going to be Richard Wolsifer who gets a big shove from Agnell Phillip. He himself got a big shove from Sam Nieto. Phillip's not happy about it either.
Saying on the radio, are you sure you want to be given that big of a shove in the middle of the corner? So the 94 not really appreciative of that shove from Sam Nieto, and that brings up an interesting point, Dylan, that you mentioned Brett Griffin giving some tips to Chandler Smith, a new driver, especially in these next gens of the NASCAR Cup Series. Not a lot of drafting experience for him, but that's something that a lot of people drafting for the first time, running at Daytona or Talladega, need to learn is don't push the pusher and don't push in the turns. You can't push the pusher because you're just going to push them into a wall that eventually is going to lead to more than likely an incident with just a bunch of people shoving each other more forward. But don't push in the turns. These cars get so light in the middle of 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. The lightest shove in these corners can send the cars around.
Yeah, to say the least. I mean, it was a quite clean race, surprisingly, even with the 2 major wrecks that happened in the Cup race on Saturday. But it's so easy for chaos to happen. You see them trying to go down the inside of Brandon Fetterplace, the lap car on the outside. When things are coordinated and things are calm, people and bad shoves, bad pushes aren't made, usually you can stay fairly comfortable. And we're closing on 59 laps to go. I don't think you can really make it in 1 pit stop in this race, but we did have a few cautions, so maybe it's possible. It's going to be close. It might be a 2-stop race on fuel.
Already have had a good amount of drivers coming into the pit lane as well from where we began this race. But as we stand right now with the pack kind of blowing apart a little bit there as the top 4 now separate themselves out in the front of the field. Moving to the outside goes the number 2, or thought about it. That was Sam Nieto in his number 2 Ford Mustang, and we sit on board with him, and you can hear him through turns 3 and 4, lifting off the throttle as he got in. He'll stay off the back bumper, the number 94 of Agnell Phillip, as they come back to the front straightaway. Getting squirrely again as they work their way into the tri-oval, and there's another big checkup that the 2 has to navigate.
This is too far in front for the front 4. It's going to be interesting to see how the rest of the pack negotiate this. We're single file until we're 3 wide. It's going to settle down, though, and go back to 2 wide racing. Pops down to the inside. Gregory Shaw there. Manati Major wants something and jumps in front of Bradley Burke on the outside.
I mentioned Manati Major being in that must-win situation. And as they work their way through 3 and 4, Major now leads the outside line, but just not enough help. He's got cars behind him, but he needed much more momentum. 4 cars is not going to beat 8 on the inside, and now Major goes back to the middle line, and Tom Wetmore tries to jump up to give him a hand, but he's going to go all the way up to the outside line now and get a shove from that Brant's machine behind to the number 79 of William Schmidt.
Is it starting to calm down, or is that just my delusions right now?
Is this your definition of calming down? I mean, I agree, but we're still kind of all over the place.
I know. Oh, Manati Major with an interesting push. He provides an interesting push. It's weird, right? You have a different, place. You start out at one spot, you get to another spot, and by all intents and purposes, it's still chaotic, but it's not as chaotic as what we saw.
Brett Pancari up on the outside line. He'll let the pack go by. He'll get set down now, 1 down. And we'll take a look at our full live championship standings and get the full picture of the playoffs. So we see those wins up in front. Now, the first number in those 4 numbers denote their wins. So Agnell Phillip with 3 wins. Matt Danson, if he were to win this race, which he leads right now, would also be at 3 wins. Then you have Cody Harris, Michael Araya, Thomas George, Sean Casto. Then all of our locked-in drivers on points. And there you see as Richard Wolsifer goes to the front, he gets shuffled now up into the top 16, but that's only if he is within those top 25 as Danson is going to get a shove from Nieto, and we're all sorts of messed up heading into the tri-oval.
Okay, I take back what I said about it being calm. That was not calm.
That was very, very hairy going through the tri-oval at that point. Sam Nieto also had a bit of connection issues as well. That definitely did not help things as we now settle back out, and I think the pack starts to learn a little bit more, but Nieto is not wanting to sit still. He goes to the outside with Tom Whitmore in tow.
Yeah, I don't get that. They're going to slow down fairly quickly unless they have some friends come up to the outside. They're already stalling out. Danson's trying to catch up. I don't know if that was the best move. It end up being a net negative, but they are connected much more than the front, starting to fall back and get the outside form. But let's talk a little bit about the standings real quick now that we've got a few seconds. You know, and by the way, really, as Dancing goes to the middle, he leaves the Nieto and Wetmore pairing out to dry on the outside, or are they getting left to dry on the outside and them in the middle? I don't know, but smart move with putting the number of wins in the first number of those standings. That's pretty genius.
So admittedly, the way that we have to do the points for our overlay system is that it is purely points based. It's not like a NASCAR playoffs win based type thing. So instead of just counting points so we could have a live points system with playoffs counted, they just get 1,000 points for winning the race. So it works a little bit, and unfortunately there's no way to really prevent a driver from gaining those 1,000 win points if they're not within the top 25. So right now, Wolsifer at the lead of this race is kind of maybe locked in. We'll need to verify post-race if he did earn enough points if he were to win. But if one of those drivers highlighted in blue is winning the race like a Minotzi Major, and unfortunately now Carl Pooler's not going to be involved in that conversation, they would be automatically locked in.
Yeah, isn't that the interesting thing? I don't know if you can go down to where 25th is in the standings right now on your live standings, but yeah, Richard Wolsifer is the biggest, throw a dart, try and hit bullseye while blindfolded kind of pick for this race. Not necessarily win, but to make the playoffs with a win, because you got to make the top 25 in points in addition to the minimum race participation requirement of 15 out of 20 of the regular season races. You win and you break into the top 25 in points. Richard Wolsifer is currently 29, 34 points back from Seth DeMerchant and 25 and 25th, I should say. And I don't believe Seth DeMerchant has appeared. He has not in this race at all. So a win would definitely help him leapfrog DeMerchant, but would he leapfrog other drivers who still need to make it in? That would be the biggest, walk off. That's like 2 strikes, 2 outs. You're down, 3 runs. You got nobody on base in the bottom of the 9th, and somehow y'all still win.
So with Grant Davis now leading the way, we can take another look at those live points standings, and we can, of course, we won't see Richard Wolsifer now without that win to add on to his total. However, Seth DeMerchant with 240 points, not competing tonight. He stays locked at 240 points. So that means that all that the Richard Wolsifer machine would need to do is earn more than 240 points. There's also, not including drivers in front of him, but Alexander Light not in this race. Nick Mara is now scored out of this race, P28. Andrew Freenarch not competing in this race. With Seth DeMerchant in 25th, not here. This is opening the door wide open for Richard Wolsifer, and I believe right now he would earn that spot, and I can check with our championship debug system, and yeah, he would earn that 25th spot. So Wolsifer is now eligible to walk away with a win and playoff eligibility if he were to win this race. He still needs to win, which is still a monumental thing to do for that number 56, but he sits in second with speed under the hood of that Chevy Camaro.
Yeah, no, he absolutely would make it. Came into this race 89 points off the playoff cut line. Came into the race 29 points, or 29th in the overall point standings. 34 points back of DeMerchant for 25th. Like you said, because DeMerchant is not in this race, because Light is not in this race, Andrew Farinaj is not in this race, and Nicholas Mara is mired back, 20 laps down of obviously getting involved in the earlier incidents in 28th. That does open the door for for Richard Wolsifer to be a win and you're in situation. The other drivers that are in this race that are also in that situation is Ryan Dunkelberger, who is he even? No. Dunkelberger's not in this race either. So there's a lot of drivers who could have, you know, taken part and tried to get in, but it's Wolsifer, it's Manazzi Major. Brett Pancari was showing, and he's currently a lap down. Pancari was also the last driver that could make it in on points, although it would be a Hail Mary, and that's not going to happen anymore. Jaron Weinmaster was the same deal. Obviously, Carl Buller. So it becomes a lot more, you know, salvageable for a driver like Eric Papineau, who came into this race +6 on the cut line and the 16th driver, but Buller is not able to kind of capitalize on anything because he's out of contention now. Weinmaster needs to outscore Papineau by 33 points, and it's got to have a lot of other things happen. I don't see that happening. The only thing now that would potentially take one of the three drivers that have not locked but are currently in the top 16 in playoffs out of the playoffs would be a situation where there's a new winner, and Wetmore, who just currently led another lap, is getting a bonus point. And you know what? He's about to clinch himself too, because that means he only needs 35th in this race, and there's not 35 drivers, so he's in as well.
So Wetmore will compete for a championship, and
easy
you
enough.
See Gregory Shaw behind, you see Richard Wolsifer behind, Agnell Phillip in this first pack of 4, and we've already talked about what is at stake for the 56 of Richard Wolsifer, still in his first season of action here at the Full Throttle Real Sim Racing Cup Series. That Limitless Esports number 56 has not had the results that I think he was looking for. Best finish of 15th so far this season, coming earlier on this season back in March. However, if you were to enter the playoffs, that would be a monumental drive back for the number 56. How about for Agnell Phillip? Now, he's already won this season, of course, 3 wins leading him into the playoffs and trying to contend for his second championship of the Full Throttle Real Sim Racing Cup Series. But Dylan, you got to remember, bonus points are on the line. Every win gives them 3 bonus points heading into the playoffs. He'd go into the playoffs with 2,015 points, a solid measure above his competition in the playoffs. That could mean the difference between Agnell Phillip having to really push in the round of 16 or just kind of putting his feet up and letting the cards fall where they may.
That is definitely a big deal, but remember, even though it's 15 points up, right? That's huge. One bad race could make that situation where the feet are up, and then you got to get going again, kind of straddle the chair. You know what I'm saying?
I think also if he were to get those bonus points, though, Dylan, that would almost kind of, I don't want to say stop the bleeding, because the bleeding hasn't happened yet, but at least if he had a bad race, he has a little bit more points to fall back on. But also, when have you ever seen Agnell Phillip really have a bad race?
Yeah, that's true. I mean, Agnell Phillip having a bad race, I think that has to happen because somebody else has a bad race and involves him in that race. I feel like Phillip is definitely the favorite. Let me retract that. I think we've got a few favorites in this field. I just don't see Phillip, letting go of his crown.
I think it would be, quite frankly, a little bit shocking if he were to lose a bit of his ground at the front of the championship. But where we sit now, we're 3 wide, closer to the tail end of this line. Outside line sees the number 52 get a big shove out into the front of that line. That's John Castellano, and we're wrecking. Sam Nieto gets pushed below the double yellow. He saves it, but that could have been bad because that was right mid-pack.
I don't know about that, Chief. Sam Nieto, what a save. I don't know what happened. I think there was just a moment where Eric Stanford got loose. He got way up the track on the exit of 4. Matt Danson is maniacally laughing on the radio, but we're riding on board with Nieto. 19 just gives a little bit of a body check what a job by Nieto to get back on track and happen at the best possible spot where he still had all that, you know, that track to get back on track with. Obviously is going to lose the draft here and need something to happen up front, a caution to get back in contention for this win. Something to note is that the second pack that is currently consisting of 6 cars from 19th to 24th, they're 34 seconds behind. So 16 seconds on track action, something like that, separates the back of that pack with the front of the lead group.
So we're nearing halfway. We'll officially put half of this race behind us once they reach the tri-oval as they get antsy heading back into turn number 3 again. But now as we go into the longest green flag run that we have had tonight, only 2 yellow flags tonight at lap 3 and lap 7. We have not seen one since. So now we got to start thinking about the fuel window, fuel mileage, because there are a handful of drivers that their lap to pit is going to be coming up really soon.
Yeah.
A lot of them sooner rather than later. Let's take a look at those stint numbers on the right side of the timing tower. Gregory Shaw, 41 laps. Benazzi Major, 41 laps. Fuel window at about 48 laps. Dylan, we're going to be seeing a little bit of action on the pit lane soon if we don't see a yellow flag.
Yeah, it's going to happen really soon, and I feel like that's going to be the hairiest moments in this race. Now, here's the real big question. If they pit now, can they make it to the end if it stays green? Ask me in 35 to 40 laps time when it's almost the time to throw the checker. This is going to be close.
I'll have to ask you then and also put a caveat on it. Are you in the pack half throttle, or are you leading the pack full throttle like Tom Whitmore is doing right now? But 39 laps to go. Some green flag pit stops on the horizon, most sooner rather than later. But as we sit single file down at the bottom of the racetrack here at the virtual Daytona International Speedway, we'll let you hear the sights and sounds of the virtual Daytona International Speedway. It is one of my favorite segments on RaceSpotTV. RaceSpotTV fan immersion. Let's crank it up. Richard Woodruff almost came into the pit lane, but he says, just kidding, sorry, emerges back onto the racetrack. The drivers that come in under this now first wave of green flag stops, Papanow, Major, Shaw, Stanford, and that's it. 4 drivers onto the pit lane.
So speaking about Richard Woodruff, we're just mentioning him. He is one of those drivers that has met the minimum number of races that he needs to be a part of. However, even with a win, would be 7 points off from overtaking Seth DeMerchant for that 25th position. Of course, with everybody in front, that even adds more to the case. So even with a win, he would not be eligible to compete for the title. It's that interesting caveat in the RealSimRacing point system that kind of used to be in NASCAR as well, with that minimum of top 30 in points, I believe it was.
I think they still have that rule, but it also kind of ends up not being that big of a deal once you start getting playoff waivers.
Like completely in the Cup Series and the Xfinity Series and everything this year. Actually, I don't know about the Xfinity Series, but the Cup Series at least, they took that off. It does not matter as long as you're a full-time charter driver, or a team, I should say. You win, you're in. It doesn't matter if you're, you know, riding around in the back of the field the entire season, finishing last every race. If you win one race, you're in.
It also didn't matter a whole lot once you start giving playoff waivers out, and then it's kind of, well, They need to be top 30, but then they missed a couple of races and they have a waiver, so.
Well, yeah, actually didn't end up affecting the drivers who did get waivers this year. They just, you know, they still had to points their way in and try and win a race, and they ended up in the top 20 in points. I'm thinking of, you know, Bowman and Elliott, but did not end up pointing their way in or winning a race. So Hendrick Motorsports only has 2 of their 4 full-time drivers in the real world. But back to the sim world, it's actually quite clear now what has to happen for most of these drivers, as some of them take a peek down the inside to go into the pits. They don't do that. So yeah, we got the full standings with Wetmore leading right now. Wetmore, again, he's in. He's in. It doesn't matter if he wins. It does. You know, he gets those 3 extra bonus points going into the round of 16, but he's in. Steve Tucker, he is in if there is a new eligible winner. Let's get this. If there is a new eligible winner outside the top 16 in playoff standings going into this race tonight, then Tucker is in with 23rd. If there is no new winner from outside the currently in drivers, he's in with 29th, which will happen. So he's in if there's no new eligible driver and finishes way in the back. Eric Papineau, he's that driver that came in only 6 to the good. A 5th place would get him in tonight if there is a new, or if there's not a new eligible winner. If there is a new eligible winner outside the top 16, he needs to outscore Tucker by 25 points tonight to make it. That's a tall task, especially with how few drivers are left in this race compared to that. So Papineau would be, in all likelihood, the odd man out if there is a new winner from the likes of Y Master, Pancari, Manazzi Major, or Richard Wilsiford. They all need to win. I mean, at this point, they need to win.
Drivers from that second pack have now made their way into the pit lane for some of their green flag stops. Next drivers that we're looking for coming down into the pit lane, there's these drivers in this lead pack. Majority of this group last pitted on lap 40. A handful of them have last pitted on lap number 44. So we'll see when they end up coming into the pit lane, because some of them need to pit in about 4 laps. Some of them may be able to make it a little bit longer, but Tom Wetmore, 40 laps on that fuel tank. He's going to need to pit soon. One driver calling pitting in over the radio.
I've heard multiple drivers over the last set bit of laps say they're coming in. I think this time they're all telling the truth, because it is going to be a pit party.
There we
Let's
go.
see if they can get in clean and green. Oh, Danson is flying in there at the back. Everyone so far in.
Whoa,
oh, we got a call
the
to the grass.
The 94 is in the grass. Reigning champion is going through the Daytona infield. He keeps the momentum in the wheels, gets back on the racetrack, but that's going to be an unsafe pit exit as well.
That's going to be a penalty. He's going to be sent to the back. Okay, maybe he does have bad races.
I think we might have jinxed him. Are we calling that a commentator's curse?
Yes.
Okay, put it in the Race Spot Hall of Fame.
Put it on the board.
Another one for the commentator's curse. We don't have Arjuna Kankipati here, so we didn't even get like the commentator's curse king.
That's true.
We just did a simple commentator's curse, but that is going to be a black flag, and that of course is not a black flag that can be cleared. He made a mistake on pit entry, and we'll try and grab another look at that pit entry, because he was trying to get it woed up, and I'll go back here one more moment. He was trying to get it woed up. He was on the brakes, but it just did not slow up. I think as quickly as he was thinking. He's still on the gas before even reaching the kink.
I think he might have slowed up enough to be like back in the pack. Nothing, you know, not a big problem trying to get into the pits, but there was traffic in front of him that he would have smashed into. So that just, you gotta, I don't think he had to be that aggressive there at all. But some drivers are now coming down, but without any help. So Matt Danson is heading into the pits right now, as well as Sam Nieto. They're by themselves. I don't understand this decision from Danson to pit, you know, now.
Still some damage from an earlier wreck as well. I think Sam Nieto also with a little bit of damage from that one door slam that he had. As far as Agnell Phillip goes, he just brought it down to get that normal pit stop out of the way. And
Wild racing up front. Oh, wild racing up front with Tom Wetmore still in the lead.
Brent Davis leads the outside line as they work their way back to the front straightaway. Only 4 drivers now remaining on that outside line as the pack has formed its way back up. Kind of the same exact pack, just minus the drivers that made some mistakes on pit road, now in this lead battle.
You do love to see that. You don't always see that with such a, a large, aka the top, 11, 15 drivers. Yeah, let's say the top 11 drivers in the lead pack. And it's going to get even more congested. That's really good. There's no way that this stays green the rest of the way, right? Just no way. Oh, they all snake out to the outside. Matt Jansen making it a little bit difficult. He wants to be in this group, not hopefully for him getting a lap down, but he's gonna go a lap down. And I don't know if he's gonna stay within this draft pack.
Now, Dylan, I want to go back to that replay of Agno Phillip just real fast, because if we look on board, watch the commitment cone.
He went around it.
Made the commitment cone. That is not a black flag. He stays on the lead lap.
Wow. Okay, so still had to come down, still lost 20 or so seconds, 23 seconds officially, but he's on the lead lap. That was lucky. Phillip got lucky there. Smart move, though.
Might be a bad race, but that move might have just saved his race as a whole, as we've got a loose driver at the front. That's Sean Casto.
Yeah, that's I almost think that with the relatively lighter front pack that we've got going on right now, that there might be a little bit more craziness just because people think they can take bigger risks.
Ooh, Master gets loosened too.
Would that have been a jinx or just a telling of the future?
I think see, what's the difference between a jinx and just knowing the future?
It's also a super speedway show, so you should expect it. Oh, Cody Harris went all the way up top to try and take the front on the outside line. They're just still, I think everyone's just trying to find positions. There's no, there's no passive actions happening in this race. Everyone's trying to go for it here. Pulling to the outside is Sean Casto, but he goes back to the inside right now. Tom Wetmore, man, he's leading a ton of laps in this one.
And he still is leading the way with Bradley Burke, Michael Johnson, and more behind. It's now a swarm of drivers that are already locked in. If you take a look at the timing tower, you see the color coding. Eric Stanford not eligible for the playoffs. He's in this pack. Same thing with Gregory Schall, who deferred his playoff eligibility. But then you've got Minazzi Major, who is really the only driver in a must-win situation in this lead pack other than Richard Wolsifer. Those two are both looking for a win to keep their seasons alive and compete for a championship.
Yeah, this would be huge. If you're Minazzi Major, if you're Jared Weinmaster, and you're in this lead group, which they are, can you imagine, being in this scenario where with just 25 laps to go, the playoffs are in sight. A win is in sight. You are part of the conversation. You are right now the surviving 1/3 of this entire group that have registered for this race. You're there. You're right there. You got to take advantage of it now. And right now they're being held up on the outside by a little bit of tightness going on from Stanford. And if you remember, Stanford was the one who, as he gets a little squirrely after Harris is aggressive with the pushing, he was the one who was loose, or tight, I should say, on the outside, went all the way up to the wall, and now drivers are starting to bail with him as the leader, not feeling too comfortable on this outside line.
All right, Dylan, 24 laps to go. We've talked about the playoff scenarios at the front, but how about the normal driver scenarios? Tom Wetmore locked into the playoffs now on points. He is good. He does not need this win for playoffs. But does he need this win in another sense? He has one credited Full Throttle RealSimRacing Cup Series win, but in the All-Star race at North Wilkesboro Speedway. He has been the bridesmaid 6 times, most of which coming this season in 2023. Does he need this win just to kind of muscle himself up before getting into the playoffs, and after now 2 seasons of real sim racing competition, say, hey, I belong here. I belong at the top level?
I think for sure, right? It's a bulk up. Get those protein shakes out, because Tom Wetmore wants to take them all right now and get bulked up before these playoffs start. That'd be huge for not just, you know, him mentally, but to show everybody else that, hey, Tom is here, right? He is not just leading this race. He has not been leading this race by anything other than really his own talent level. He's been great at the front of this pack for most of this race. It's not so far as one would like to say. A super speedway win could sometimes be a little bit fluky. He has not shown any signs of that tonight. Bridesmaid 6 times, won the All-Star race, and he's been legitimately leading this entire field comfortably the whole run. That would be such an awesome story heading into the playoffs if he not only clinched on points, which he has, but also went in with an exclamation point, a dub, a win.
We still have over 20 laps to go for Tom Wetmore to try and command this race. Bradley Burke sits behind. It's Michael Johnson and Sean Casto, the next 2 drivers in this bottom line. We almost just had a wreck there as Sean Casto, or not, sorry, the 19 of Eric Stanford darts to the inside line.
Oh boy, Cody Harris came down and couldn't quite see. That was actually William Schmidt that he made contact with. It was pretty flush against the left side of Harris's 28 and the right side of Schmidt's 79. So no big moments there, just you know, quick kiss on the driver and passenger side doors. You sometimes have that. They're all good. We're coming to 20 laps to go. That's going to be 50 miles of racing left. We've got a group of cars ahead that is currently led by Sam Nieto, Steve Tucker, Landon Mills, Michael Araya, and Agnel Phillip of all cars. They are about to go a lap down once this lead group catches up to them, or they'll just blend in and we'll have a lot of craziness there.
A lot of craziness. There's a couple of drivers that are 1 lap down, and Davis gets turned. Grant Davis turned on the back straightaway, and the yellow flag is out for the first time since lap 7. And we're gonna have them all bunched up for another restart as well.
Wow. That was a 2-car incident in the sense that one car gave a aggressive shove to another car. Hate to point, you know, Cody Harris out here, but watch this push coming out of turn 2.
Wrong place, wrong time.
Yeah, and Nazi Major, I think that's fine for Major. I don't think there's going to be much damage. I mean, this is very dependent on your engine, what goes on in the hood. A Major might have caught a little bit. We'll get an onboard look at what he saw, but he saw his playoff chances flash before his very eyes. Wow.
Ugh.
He'll be fine.
That was close in every sense of the word. Let's go on board with Cody Harris, see what he saw, as he just gave a shove that I don't want to say it wasn't needed, Dylan, but it was just wrong place, wrong time. And it looked like there was a checkup in front as well that Harris just couldn't see in time.
Yeah, the weird thing I'm trying to like think about though is there was a checkup from one car in front of Davis, right? Like Gregory Shaw. Now there was really no checkup. It was just Harris was all over Grant Davis. It's unfortunate, but now we got a caution, and Grant Davis is still in the playoffs, right? He did not need to win tonight. He's been in for a few weeks now, so he's fine. It's not a huge thing. It's something you'll keep in the back of your mind as we start to have some pit stops. Cody Harris coming down, Nazi Major as well. Might as well get those that right side checked. Sean Kalis has been sitting for 58 laps in there, so you see his car. He's just enjoying the view of the race. But a lot of the back of the field have come down. Might as well shake it up, right?
Major pits. And they don't need it on fuel. This isn't a let's try and make it all the way to the end on fuel type of stop, or let's top it off before the end of this race stop. This is more than likely grabbing some fresh tires so they can make moves in the pack a little bit easier. We don't normally talk about tire wear, especially at the newer rescan of the Daytona International Speedway. We stay on Minazzi Major because he's getting damage repaired right now in the pits.
Might as well.
Gotta try not to go a lap down either, but pace car working its way down the back straightaway. I think Major will be okay. But those fresh tires, we don't talk about tire wear at Daytona or Talladega. It's not really a talking point, but fresher tires are going to work better in the pack than worn tires. So if Major and those other drivers that were closer to the back of the field trying to make moves in the pack, will be easier on 4 fresh pairs of shoes.
Yeah, you're absolutely right there. I feel like having those 4 fresh tires are going to, you know, even if they're not going to make that substantial of a difference, they'll make a difference in your comfort levels sometimes. You know, sometimes it's a mental thing where it's 30 laps and you're on the same, you know, set of tires. You already need to come down pit roads for one thing. Might as well just get tires and feel like you can push as much as you need to. Minazzi Major still getting repairs done on pit road as the group starts to come down through the tri-oval. He's got to get going. Like now. What is he doing?
Don't think he's going to get moving in time.
Oh.
He does. He is going to beat that pace car out.
But now he's got to catch all the way back up quickly, which I think he will, but still, that's little too close.
Little close for comfort there from the 82 Minazzi Major. But as we go now to 1 lap to go before we go back to racing, we'll go green with 16 to go. That is now caution number 3 on the night, and caution number 3 that has gone unclaimed. So all of those drivers so far tonight not wanting to claim any of the yellow flags. And honestly, Dylan, I don't really blame them. EOL penalty at Daytona is pretty detrimental, especially if you get back behind all those lap machines in the back. But they'll all go to admin review post-race. So, of course, admins are always going to get the final say, but they'll get to keep their position on track for now.
For now. It's interesting. Like, I'm trying to think of the 3 cautions we've had. The first one was a mess, so I'm not even going to comment on that. The second one, I mean, can you really blame anyone? You know, Ross, I mean, maybe Ross Cato, but it's not like he did anything with any intent. He just didn't get going, and the entire, you know, back just stacked up. I don't think you can place any blame on anyone there, honestly. So I don't think that's going to be a, you know, a double point penalty or even a single one for anyone. I do think, though, that there will be a unclaimed penalty of 2 points given to Cody Harris for that last incident. Just a bad push. But we're about to go green with 16 laps to go here. That will be hectic. There will be 40 miles from here to the finish. Who's going to win this? Will someone make the playoffs in a walk-off?
A lot is on the line in the final sprint to the checkered flag. Field in the Geico restart zone. We're back underway in the Daytona 200 with Tom Wetmore now leading the way. He'll go up to the outside line to try and block. He's trying to keep the 95 of Bradley Burke at bay, but as they go back into turn number 1, Field is 2x2, getting up to full song.
Getting up to full speed. They're 2x2, not just through the first 2 or 3 or 4 rows. They're pretty much the entire way through the front 8, 9, 10 rows. This is wild racing right now, and it's not going to cool down anytime soon.
Remember, we had a lot of cautions late in last season's August race here at Daytona. Bradley Burke is going to get the race lead as Grant Davis takes it 3 wide middle, closer to the back of the field. Off turn 4, side by side for the race lead is Michael Johnson leading the outside charge.
How is Davis still able to run in the front of the pack right now?
He's trying to make moves happen, middle 3 wide, and we've got another middle 3 wide with Eric Stanford in the middle now as they go back into turn number 1. Getting stuck on the outside line, that's the number 6 machine of Thomas George. He'll lose a good head of steam up against that outside wall. Bradley Burke leads the way, already locked into the playoffs.
Oh man, these cars looking for every single possible scenario that they could find themselves in. There is no way they're going to be content with just staying in one lane for the rest of the remaining laps.
Tom Wetmore clears the outside line. Does he take the momentum yet? He will not. Still 3 wide, closer to the end of this pack, but now they'll refine themselves back to 2 by 2. Oh, huge charge on the outside line. Michael Johnson goes to the race lead with 15 to go.
Oh man, Jared Weinmaster is in third, actually in second right now. He can sniff the playoffs at this point.
Going to the back straightaway again as Michael Johnson leads the outside line. Jared Weinmaster's looking for a way by as they all get cattywampus squirrely down the back.
Huge checkups on the outside. Weinmaster almost lost it. Huge checkup on the inside, almost losing it himself. Was Tom Wetmore, excuse me, Gregory Shaw. My goodness, these drivers aren't going to live for anything now, and the outside is uncomfortable.
Gotta be full throttle if you want to compete for the Full Throttle RealSimRacing Cup Series win at the Daytona International Speedway. See what I did there? I knew I could get something in tonight, but 13 to go, and it's Burke leading the way for some of his first laps at the front of this field tonight, but the usual suspects are still there. Here comes Wolsifer. He's got a head of steam on the outside line, looking for a race win and a playoff spot.
Oh, there's no way these cars aren't going to wreck. They're just swinging it from the inside to the outside, 3 wide, farther back in the pack. Everyone getting shuffled out and getting stuck in the middle. It's Eric Stanford. Or is it stuck on the outside? Agnell Phillip next to him. Who knows?
Big head of steam for that outside line. It's going to stall out as they enter the tri-oval, though. Wolsifer trying everything he can to get to the front of this field. The outside line is not as organized as it needs to be. 12 laps to go as they race their way through 1 and 2. I mentioned it earlier, the August race here last year, a record-setting 9 cautions for RSR competition. At the Daytona Speedway, we're wrecking. Wolsifer's in it. The big one on the back straightaway. And that might be playoff eligibility gone for Wolsifer. Harris is in it. Johnson is in it. Davis got a piece of it. Richard Woodruff, Jared Weinmaster, another one of our must-win drivers.
So many cars who had a shot at the end, done. Wow. That's the big one. You kind of had a feeling that was going to happen with the way they were racing. A few cars made it out unscathed. And one of those cars, there's still at least a few that could be in a win and in. So let's see a replay here. And it's going to be a little bit of tightness. Let's see. So this is on down the tri-oval. This is the coming to the line. And now we're on the same lap that the incident happened. So they're still 2 by 2 throughout the rest of the field. Grant Davis on the outside heading into a 3 wide situation in 1. And Johnson is right on the tail, on the rear of Richard Wolsifer. Wolsifer gets a little bit tight and doesn't even get touched until he's loose and collects everybody else. I think that was just a situation where Wolsifer got loose coming on the outside. You know, it's interesting, right? Like, loose, tight, whatever. These cars get tight. Let's say that. So he got a little bit tight and then tried to overcorrect and then got free and loose. So that's what involves everybody else. A lot of hard hits to the front ends of these cars. And that's where the major damage will happen to speed here. Get another look from Eric Papanow, who is currently 16th and the last playoff driver.
Nowhere to go for a lot of these drivers in the back. I mean, Papanow had no time to react, nowhere to go. He ends up tapping the outside wall.
He might be mostly fine.
Michael Araya with a good amount of damage as well. Manazzi Major, I think, got through. He is in the pit lane as we speak, as we go back to live pictures. Major's into the pit lane, possibly getting a touch of damage. Still nobody claiming that yellow flag, but Good solid amount of drivers hit the pit lane that last time by, and this is all drivers getting damage repaired. Kato's able to leave in the number 12. He, of course, still sits at the tail end of the lead lap. Michael Araya still in the pit lane. Agnell Phillip. Grant Davis. Manatsi Major still in the pits. Wolsifer's back on the track to try and salvage as much as he can. Well, let's look at that playoff cut line in the general picture of the playoffs. We're pretty much back to where we started. Wetmore is still in. Feder Place is in. Tucker and Papanow, which I do think that's pretty much exactly how we entered tonight.
Except for Feder Place being in front of Wetmore. It is pretty much exactly. It is exactly how we entered the night. I mean, Pooler obviously has been out of the race for a long time. He's not going to make the playoffs. Brett Bunkari is a lap down, but still on track. Jaron Winemaster is also a lap down, and he actually got a tow, so I don't see him being able to win this race. All the drivers that were technically still eligible to point their way in, being Pooler, Winemaster, Bunkari, they're kind of just done. They need multiple Hail Marys to go their way. I just don't see it happening here with multiple laps getting back, all of that. So we're in a situation now where Wetmore's in, remember. Steve Tucker, he is, I mean, I think he's in. It would take something monumentally wrong to happen for Tucker to miss it on points, even with a new winner. Really, it comes down to, if there is no new winner, then Papanow makes it. If there is a new winner, then Papanow most likely is out. With 8 to go, and we're currently seeing cars pacing, you know, Manatsi Major still in the lead lap. So I think, is he the only one? Richard Wolsifer still as well, remember. Yeah, those are the only 2 drivers that are still winning in and on the lead lap.
A lot of ground for those drivers to try and make up as well from the back, but drivers up front that are now on worn tires and lower fuel tanks: Bradley Burke, Tom Wetmore, Sean Casto, Gregory Shaw, and Thomas George. Shaw pitted 28 laps ago. The other 4 pitted 22 laps ago. Everybody else either pitted 9 laps ago in the last caution or 1 lap ago under this caution. 8 to go. Field is 2 by 2. And the picture of the drama and the storylines is almost completely different than how we dropped the green flag, but somehow still the same general suspects at the front. Can anybody be a surprise winner from the World Center of Racing? We are back underway with Bradley Burke controlling the field on the outside line through the Geico restart zone. And as quickly as Burke got on the loud pedal, he'll control the field from the inside line, leaving Sean Casto up on the outside.
A lot of cars that are hurting for horsepower right now. That's why you don't see them that connected up front. Some of them who've had a lot of damage repaired at the back are going to need another caution to try and get in this lead group. You can see all of them sprinkled out. Oh, up to the wall. Are we having a few hits? No, we're good. We're good so far.
Drivers get squirrely at the back of the pack, but at the front, Burke leads with Wetmore getting a solid gap over Gregory Shaw behind. Thomas George is going to get a big shove from William Schmidt on the outside line as they sit side by side. Now Burke almost getting loose at the front of the pack with a big shove from the Camaro behind the 51 of Tom Wetmore, side by side for the race lead as they dive back to turn 1.
Oh man, Bradley Burke getting pushed by that 51 machine. They've got some speed, but it's cyclical, right? It's gonna be faster on the inside for a little bit of time, then it's gonna be faster on the outside for another little bit of time. Big checkup from Burke there. The 51 and the rest of the inside checks up. The outside is faster this point in time. Oh, and they're all scrambling. Three wide.
They fan out to try and get positions. Landon Mills goes right to the bottom, leaves Casto in the middle, leaves William Schmidt all the way up by the outside wall. He'll try and get some help up there, but nobody willing to bite. George defends the outside line with a big head of steam from Casto, but that opens the door for last year's winner of this race, Landon Mills, on the bottom.
They're wrecking at some point. There's no way they make it the next 6 laps to go here without something going wrong and us going back into overtime. This is wild.
2x2 pace laps at 200 miles an hour as they go back to turn 3. 5 to go at the line. They're getting desperate, and around goes Eric Stanford.
Oh.
He's in the grass, and we've got a big one on our hands in turn 2. As the double zero gets involved to Steve Tucker. That's Gregory Shaw spinning up the banking. Grant Davis gets a big shot from that. And we're back under the yellow flag now on lap 75.
Oh boy. It was almost like 2 separate incidents right there. And oh man, lots of drivers once again completely out of this one. Let's get the replay. So Stanford goes off, and he's probably really thankful that that happened, because he doesn't get collected by anybody else. He slides through the grass. He's fine. No damage there. He is totally fine. The wreck happens after that, and if we get a replay of Agnell Phillips on board, we'll see exactly how the second stage of this wreck happened. So 94 we see in that white machine, watch, tries to go in the middle at the same moment. I believe it was the 26 trying to come down of Landon Mills. Yeah, here's the onboard of Phillip. So it looks like the 30 machine was coming down, and there just wasn't any room for Phillip to go. And obviously, wreck happens. That's I don't know if I'd say that's completely on Phillip, but I think, again, over aggression, even at this stage in the race. Oh, big hit at the end there. Phillip, it was weird, right? 2-stage accident right there. First stage separation.
Danson got involved as well at the tail end of that wreck. You saw Gregory Shaw, you saw Grant Davis. But at the front of the field, this leaves Thomas George to lead the race. Sean Casto, Bradley Burke, Tom Wetmore, Agnell Phillip, even with getting involved in that wreck. Not a ton of damage, it looks like, to that number 94, so he sits in P5. Kaczynski, Tucker, Nieto, Papanow, and Schmidt, now your top 10. With a playoffs that look pretty much the same as when we entered. Just Thomas George grabbing an extra bonus point if he were to win this race. Same thing with Casto. Bradley Burke would gain his first bonus points if he were to win this race. The only real different thing that would happen up at the front of this pack is Mike Kaczynski, who is not competing in the playoffs, not eligible to compete in the playoffs. He could spoil the party, P6 right now, and grab that race win.
That would be impressive. That would be very impressive.
Field pacing behind the official iRacing pace car. And still no claims of that last yellow flag. So that will again go to admin review post race. This is caution number 5 of the evening. We have not reached the record 9 that we had here last year in August. And of the drivers up front as well, I don't believe any of them are looking to break the streak of single race winners here at the Daytona International Speedway. Past winners see Esteban Rodriguez, Landon Mills, Daniel Eberhardt, Seth DeMerchant, and Jeremy Miller for the last 5 years. No repeat winners in the last 14 races. I don't think anybody is looking to break Anthony DeBarro's record just yet. But with 1 to go before we go back to green, Dylan, we sit behind the official iRacing pace car. We will not be in Real Sim Racing overtime. It will be a natural green-white checker. We will go green with 2 laps to go in the scheduled race distance. Question is, do they make it back to the white flag to end this race?
That is a great question. One that better men than me have tried to answer and usually have gotten it incorrect. You do want to hear something interesting, though.
I do.
How many times have we seen Bradley Burke run up front in any RSR race?
Fair amount.
Bradley Burke has never won a Real Sim Racing Full Throttle Cup Series race.
Burke's got something on the line. Wetmore trying to win his first ever points race. Thomas George, Sean Casto, both with wins this season, trying to add on to their bonus points heading into the 2023 playoffs. A lot can happen at the front of this pack. Reigning champ, Agnell Phillips still up there, Mike Kaczynski, Steve Tucker, Sam Nieto, William Schmidt, and Eric Papinow. Round out your top 10 as the pace car is back into the safety of the pit lane. It's 2 laps to go from Daytona. Do they make it to the white flag to end out this race? We're about to find out as Thomas George in control of the field. Tries to get to the front, but we're wrecking already. The 52 at Casto's up and into the wall, and we're going into overtime.
Well, that was lazy. No better way to describe that.
More drivers got caught up on the inside. Mike Kaczynski is involved in this one.
What happened, man? Like, Matt Danson just speaking over the radio comms, just making us crack up. But yeah, Casto just, he went up, opened the door down the inside, past the line, and then tried to come back down, and Burke was already there. I don't know about that. I don't know. just felt like, come on, guys, let's get up to speed before we start doing that.
Kaczynski got involved. Stanford got involved. There's Eric Papinow in the 37. There's Agnell Phillip getting a nice shot. That catches more race cars with more damage tonight as the field catches the official iRacing pace car. We will now go into Real Sim Racing overtime. And can't help but be reminded, Dylan, about the NASCAR Xfinity Series race from the Real World Daytona International Speedway on Friday night, where it seemed like we could not get to the white flag to really save our lives if we had to.
Yeah, I don't want to talk about that. We got involved. The 16 team of the Xfinity Series got involved. Nothing we could do about it. Tried to fix that damage and salvage 22nd place finish there at the end, but those cautions did help us get, a few spots back. That was a fun weekend at Daytona. Felt like for the Cup race at the 13 team, it was just a win. It felt like a win for 15th place. Love this track. Love this place. You know what happened? You know what happened 60 miles from the track on Saturday?
What did?
A Starlink rocket launch.
Oh, I remember that.
It was going up the backstretch at 9 o'clock during the race. iRacing's got to model that in here.
So back in the space shuttle days, I haven't tried it recently, but from my place in Palm Beach, you could see the rocket launches. Not that well, but you could see them. I can't imagine being just about 45 minutes north of the Space Coast in Daytona, seeing that rocket launch.
You know where I was on, I guess you could say Saturday morning at 3:27 a.m.?
Where?
12 miles. I was on the Space Force base with a few SpaceX employees and Myatt Snyder. we were at the Space Force base 12 miles from Launch Pad 39A watching Falcon 9 rockets send up 4 astronauts to the International Space Station. And then the Falcon 9 landed itself 0.7 miles from where I was.
I think the most impressive part of that is the casual Myatt Snyder name drop.
Myatt's a good dude. He's going to be, he was already announced to be racing the last few races of the season, that 19 machine for JGR, and he pit spots for NBC, and with his dad, Marty Snyder, a lot of times during the race weekend. So always love talking to him. He's a good dude, really good dude.
Well, back to the virtual racing, and we might get
him in here.
We might get some planes taking off the back straightaway. Oh, we're not going to get any virtual rocket launches, but we are now ready to go back to racing as the lights go out on top of the official iRacing pace car. And this is Real Sim Racing Overtime 2-lap shootout. It is not attempt 2 of 3. It is attempt 1 of 3. The leader takes the white flag. Next flag will be the checkered. Caution flag causes the restart. And you can tell we've had a good handful of overtimes so far this season. Didn't even change my graphic.
Yeah. You know what's funny? I never really think that we're going to need all 3 overtime attempts, but, we probably will need all 3 based on how this race has kind of lended itself to being as they roll down the backstretch. I mean, who realistically could win this race? I mean, Steve Tucker's there, but Tucker is pretty much in the playoffs right now. Tucker's never won a race. He's 5th. Burke's never won a race. Wetmore has never won a points-paying race, but technically has one. That All-Star race was involved in the stats and everything. So there's been 98 winners in the Full Throttle Real Sim Racing Cup Series. Who's going to be 99th? Could it happen tonight?
Bradley Burke will be our control car in the number 95. Thomas George on the outside. Tom Wetmore, Agnell Phillips, Sam Nieto, rounding out your top 5. Who walks away with the win of the Daytona 200? Will it be one of our locked-in playoff drivers? Can Manazzi Major make their way in from P10 and walk away with a needed win to qualify for the playoffs? Will we even make it back to the white flag? It's the first attempt at Real Sim Racing Overtime as Thomas George on the outside gets us going. Bradley Burke on the inside. Burke is going to lose out on the lead across the line from Thomas George. Big shove to the back bumper of that number 6 from the 51 on Wetmore as we go into turn number 1. Top 2 are clear as they work their way through the first corner.
Yeah, but the top 2 have separated themselves entirely from the rest of this field as they're trying to make their way up to speed. That inside line is connected. They're going to be chugging here.
Squarely on the bottom line, but they keep it straight for now as we stay on the outside. Wetmore goes forward and Nieto gets turned. Nieto almost turns the 51. He does. Now everybody spins down to the inside grass. No caution yet.
They're still wrecking.
We're still racing at the front, and now the caution flag is called.
Thomas George says, I'm about to say, he said this on the radio, I was about to say there's no way there's not a caution there. There wasn't for like 10 seconds.
Everybody spun down to the grass, and that's a lot of damage to the front end of that number 39 of Michael Johnson. Let's take a look at the replay of what happened coming down the back straightaway. Nieto made a very, very quick move, and that move was just a little bit too quick, and that led to the incident, and Tom Wetmore gets turned on the back straightaway.
Yeah, and Nieto's flying through.
He made that move way too swift.
Yeah, he made that move way, way too swift. That's a shame for Wetmore there.
Major involved.
Yeah, Major, I was trying to watch his view live, and he was fine for the first little bit. You'll see through here, he's fine, right? And then Shaw comes down and includes Major in there. I don't know what forced Shaw down unless he got a little spooked by what was going down the outside and tried to just come down and collect others. Just what happens in a wreck, right? There's not many places to go, and you're trying to figure out where you can go. Here's on board with Michael Johnson, currently in 7th in the race. Does he avoid most of this, or?
No, there's nowhere for him to go, and there's
Nope.
that damage.
that's my answer right there. That's huge damage. Who's going to finish on the lead lap? I mean, there's very few drivers that don't have any damage in this race. And here's the crazy thing. We still have, if there's another wreck, one more attempt at this. 2 total attempts remaining.
Still do have 2 more attempts at RSR overtime. Neither the last caution or this caution have been claimed by anybody, so a grand total where we sit now of 7 cautions will go to admin review post-race. If we were to get one more caution off of this next overtime restart and then one more, we would tie the caution record here at the Daytona International Speedway in RSR competition with 9. We sit right now at 7, and we'll see if we end up getting any more. But we just continue to weed cars down, and there's not a lot of drivers still left at the front that we have talked a whole lot about tonight. I mean, William Schmidt's kind of been there, but we haven't talked much about him. That number 79 Bowie Esports Camaro sitting now P2. Sam Nieto will be P3. Bradley Burke goes back to P4, and you cannot kill the momentum of Agnell Phillip. He's still in the top 5.
All right, listen, Agnell. We got to talk about this, man. He's too fast sometimes. Some interesting names that are currently on the lead lap. You know, William Schmidt, who started the race in 29th. He's an interesting case. I don't think he's not won a race, has he? I lied. He's got 1 win in his belt. Bradley Burke running in 4th is the first driver without a win. Steve Tucker, of course, has never won yet. He's running in 6th. Wetmore's got that all-star win. He's running in 8th. Manazzi Major somehow still out there. If you've got damage and it's not huge at this point, anything could happen. So stay out there, man. Only 18 cars on the lead lap, and Prep Pancari is back on the lead lap. Could you imagine? He looks like he's got a pretty clean car, too.
That would be definitely the most interesting development of the night if Brett Pancari were to come back and win this race. However, this is now officially attempt number 2 at an overtime restart. Same rules apply. 2-lap shootout. Leader takes the white flag. Next flag will be the checkered flag. A caution flag on this green flag lap will lead to yet another restart. With 7 cautions right now, we have tied what we had in the Daytona 250 back in February, first race of the regular season. We had 7 cautions there, went 4 laps over distance. If we were to end on this overtime restart, we would be 8 laps over distance, ending at lap 88.
What an interesting set of happenings in this race. I'm trying to think of who hasn't been involved in an incident. And honestly, maybe just Thomas George. Like, everyone's been involved in at least something, right? No car's coming out of here clean. Even that being said, we still have, what, 17 now drivers on the lead lap? 17. Wild. Pace car's going in.
We've got a lot to play for. Is this going to be the final overtime restart, or will we rack them up again? It's second attempt at RSR overtime. We are back underway. Field dives their way out of the trioval, and Thomas George dives his way to the bottom of the racetrack. He'll protect that line from William Schmidt. Bradley Burke now free to try and lead the outside line as they go into turns 1 and 2.
Major still involved in the top of this field. He still could get a win that he so desperately needs, but the outside is checking up big time here. 3
wide, closer to the back of the pack, is getting stuck on the outside. That's Steve Tucker. Thomas George leads the way. Big head of steam from
Dancing.
William Schmidt behind. Here comes Sam Nieto. Here comes Agnell Phillip. Here comes Bradley Burke. He goes to the bottom of the racetrack. White flag this time by, and Burke is looking for the race lead.
Oh my goodness, you see that car with all that steam in the back? It's Shaw. Look at Phillip going all the way down to the track. He's in the inside. White flag is out. Last lap.
Steve Tucker dives to the inside looking for the race lead, but that push from William Schmidt to the back bumper of the 6 is keeping him in the fight. Major's now into the group for the race lead as they work their way off of turn 2.
Major is in 4th place, 4th in line on the outside. If he gets in front and wins, he wins and gets into the playoffs. They're checking up in the back. It's a fight for the top 4.
It's a tandem draft now for this race win as William Schmidt is tucked into the back bumper. Tom Wetmore gets a run. Wetmore's gonna shove him. Major to the bottom. No help for Manazzi Major in the 82. He's not gonna get there in time. Schmidt peeks out. Not gonna get there either. And Thomas George looking for the race win. He gets it in a photo finish. Thomas George in the 6 has won his 2nd race of the season in the RSR Cup Series.
Race win number 8. And Thomas George is all-time RealSimRacing career. His 218th start. He moves himself in a tie for 13th all-time in the wins list. Holy cow. What did I say just before we took that final green flag? Who's the only driver that probably hasn't had any damage until right there? Thomas George.
He didn't need it to punch his ticket into the playoffs, but he will now gain more bonus points heading into the playoffs and will equal Matt Danson heading into the first round in the RealSimRacing Cup Series playoffs. What a finish. What a way to end the night from the virtual Daytona International Speedway. And your race winner, Thomas George, in that number 6 Ford Mustang. He's become iconic in that number 6, and it's going to be even more iconic in Full Throttle RealSimRacing Cup Series victory lane here from the virtual Daytona International Speedway. Thomas George is going to start to burn it down in the number 6, and we'll take a look at your full finishing results and give you your updates on playoff contenders. Thomas George grabs the win. William Schmidt grabs 2nd. Tom Wetmore in 3rd. Manazzi Major in 4th. Needed a win. They will not compete in the RealSimRacing Cup Series playoffs. They fall short at the end of this race. Matt Danson, Sean Casto, Bradley Burke, Ross Cato, Michael Araya, and Eric Papanow gonna round out the top 10. Dylan.
Nolan, oh man, I'm not gonna ever let you forget that. Sam Nieto starts the pack back outside the top 10 in 11th with Brett Puncari, who also needed a win in 12th. Richard Wolsifer needed a win as well. Agnell Phillip did not need a win, but he found himself having a very up and down day, ends up in 14th. Gregory Shaw, Eric Stanford, 15th and 16th, with Steve Tucker in 17th, the last car, I should say, on the lead lap. No one was a lap down, but Jaron Weinbaster and Brandon Fetterplace were 2 laps down. Michael Johnson in 20th, 4 laps down. And then we get really to the graveyard here. Woodruff, Harris, Mike Maddox, Grant Davis, Landon Mills, Tom Moreno, Braden Whitaker, Nick Mara, Sean Kalist, and Carl Pooler, your rest of the field. Pooler, who needed that win as well, or needed to point his way in, was out 4 laps in.
And that is a look at your full race results. And Dylan, I want to look back at that entire final lap, because just what?
So much happened.
So much happened from the front to the back, and I want to make sure we get a proper look at it. So we'll take a look at it here now, and just first of all, it was Thomas George in command, but then runs just started coming everywhere. I mean, there's Steve Tucker looking to the inside. Wetmore ends up here. Minazzi Major. How about Gregory Shaw entering his name in the hat?
Yeah, Shaw had a whole burst of just momentum coming to the white flag, kind of stalled out. And then there was a lot of incidents here. Heard a lot of spinning, heard a lot of wrecking. They look like ants from this vantage point, but that's a big wreck. And then we just get, strung out here, 4 in front. And, if you're Minazzi Major, you don't really have that much you can do. Being in the draft versus trying to make a move without any help, it's insane. Schmidt didn't have the momentum, didn't have the run he needed to pull out and get some steam anywhere. But my goodness, that was a massive final lap. And the playoff standings, man, they are... I don't think they've changed from coming into this race. I think we had the 3 who were unconfirmed going in, 1 confirmed for sure early in the race when we knew there weren't going to be enough cars to kind of affect his standing. But other than that, I do believe, if my calculations are correct, that Eric Papineau is the 16th and final driver in.
We'll make sure everything is correct, and then we'll make sure all bonus points are accounted for. Then we will show you your final playoff leaderboard going into the round of 16. That starts next week at the Darlington Raceway. But for now, we start the post-race show, and we bring our race winner up here into the broadcast booth, Thomas George in the 6. Thomas, talk first. That was an intense final restart in double RSR overtime. What were you thinking coming to the green flag for the final time?
Trying to time the restart, right? Get in front of William, and then we both jump up to the outside and push like hell to the end there. Otherwise, I was just thinking, well, this is either going to win or it's not. And then, well, I'll be damned. It won. I was mad that I lost Daytona earlier this year, but finally got that one back, I guess.
Solid night for you all night. I mean, you were running up front and kind of every lead pack that we had throughout the entire night. Was this a statement race coming into the playoff, or was it like you mentioned, you were annoyed you lost the Daytona race earlier on this season and you came into this one just looking for retribution and a spot in victory lane?
I mean, I'd say a bit of both. I mean, I know when I go to certain tracks, I know I either have a really good shot to win or I don't, depending on the track. And I mean, I still, even though I've got 2 wins on the season, both came at very draft heavy tracks, and you got to start testing for Darlington, which I do like running, but obviously that's a different discipline, and that's going to be, obviously we got a lot of different types of tracks in the playoffs, and I'm just happy that we got this team's got some momentum going into the playoffs and getting the confidence back up after that little bit of a slump during the last month and a half or so. But now it's time to really get to work and figure out how to pick up some speed on the other tracks, or at least make sure we get the consistency back that we needed to do, because I lost that from earlier in the year and I need to get it back in the other tracks.
We look forward to seeing you compete for a championship here in the playoffs. Thomas, thank you for joining us here in the broadcast booth post-race, and congratulations on your win tonight from Daytona. You got more bonus points heading into the playoffs. We'll see you when we start the round of 16.
I appreciate it, and I just want to thank all my teammates at Steelhorse, all my alliance partners at Bowie Esports, Valencia, even though I guess you guys don't have trading paints up tonight, so I'll put that on my Twitter and you can retweet that later. And yeah, I'm going to go try not to puke up my dinner now, because freaking stomach bug's been getting me all week.
Well, we hope you feel better before we start Darlington as well. But that was Thomas George, your race winner tonight from the virtual Daytona International Speedway. And we move on to second place finisher, the 79 of William Schmidt. Another solid night for him. And Dylan, you're standing by trackside with the 79.
Yeah, William Schmidt right there at the end. William, you had a great run going for you all night. You know, we were talking about Thomas George being that one driver who it didn't seem like he was involved in much, but at the same time, I don't think you were involved in any of the craziness somewhat. What did you think of your race, both heading into it and coming out of it? William, you got us? I moved William. William is not with us. So I'm going to take, instead of William Schmidt, we're going to go to Tom Wetmore, who finished in P3. William says he's having some audio issues with TeamSpeak. So let's bring in Tom Wetmore in third.
Yeah.
Tom Wetmore, third place for you here. That was certainly a race for you. Up and down, take us through it.
There was a lot going on there. We qualified up front, got shuffled to the back, ended back up front. I think we might have led the most laps tonight. Get past, know we can do it, then get right reared and put this Mission 22 Tube Tech ZL1 into the fence, destroy the toe, and somehow I'm still talking to you guys tonight. I don't know what happened.
Hey, well, you're talking to us. You're all good. You're here. And we can also say that from the moment you took the green flag, you had clinched a playoff spot. Heading into, the round of 16, race 1, you're currently, and we're just looking at the current standings now, you are tied with many drivers who have not won in a points race yet this year. You feel like you have a shot to make it out of the round of 16?
It's funny you say that, Dylan, and appreciate you being the official Bob Pockers of esports, it feels like.
Hey, don't listen. It's so... we'll talk about that later, because I'm called Bob Jr. by our pit crew at Colleague, but keep going.
Well, you better hope that the rest of the boys over there don't happen to hear this one, because I'll tell you, you definitely helped us be able to play a little bit aggressive tonight and go for a win. So, knowing that we were locked in when 30 cars took grid tonight, it gave us the confidence to go out and do something with it, and we were going to live the night tonight, and got to thank Live the Night Productions coming on board. Just one race supporting them and supporting Mission 22 for this charity race that RSR puts on once a year here at Daytona. Thought we were going to put it in victory lane, but that's not how plate racing always works, is it?
No, it is certainly not, but you came in here originally in the beginning of this week. You knew that you had a very solid shot of making it, but it wasn't close to being confirmed. Obviously, with Gregory Shaw removing his eligibility, it helped a little bit. But you feel like, with Darlington coming up next, Kansas, Bristol, what do those three tracks, what can you do there to make it to the round of 12?
Yeah, no, Dylan, appreciate that. And if you looked at the starts this year, we've missed 5 races due to a challenging work schedule, and so missing 5 races but still making the playoffs, and the amount of times been able to talk with you guys this season in the interview booth for podium finishes gives me a lot of confidence that we're going to make it in the round of 12, knowing that we're going to be here for all the races, not having to miss due to a work schedule. So definitely looking forward to seeing what kind of stuff we can put together. And if I'm talking to you guys every week, that means we're probably going to lock ourselves in. So as long as I get to talk to you after every race, I think we're having a pretty dang good shot in this Tube Tech Camaro ZL1, man.
Yeah, fair enough. I guess it's just something you'll have to deal with talking to me after these races if you get a podium result. But Tom, congratulations once again. Looking forward to seeing what you do in the playoffs. Try not to miss any more unless you get a win in these playoff rounds, all right?
Hey, man, if it all goes wrong, I got the coverage of Robin Steele Attorneys at Law on the side of this car to make up for anything. But I can tell you they're going to be invoicing a certain driver tonight for the right front damage. But outside of that, man, it's all of us just trying to go for a win at these plate tracks. And I know Sam was actually trying to help me get past Thomas because he was a strong car tonight. So we were working together to make it happen. It's just, hey, man, sometimes it all goes wrong. But hopefully we'll get to bring this Tube Tech Chevy back to talk to you guys next week. It's just, I hope you don't mind. I'd like to talk with you guys first, because that means we won one of these dang things finally.
Hey, that's up to you, not us, buddy. Congrats again, Tom. Looking forward to seeing what you do.
Awesome. Thanks, Dylan. Have a great night.
All right, always great talking to Tom. Let's William Schmidt. Let's get him back in. I think he got his issues fixed.
Yeah.
William, you got a copy?
Yep, I gotcha.
All right, buddy. Hey, second place, not too bad there. You're locked into the playoffs. You already knew you were locked in coming into this race. Just take us through that final, charge trying to get by the eventual race winner here in Thomas George. Did you feel like you had a shot, or did you kind of say, the momentum wasn't there heading into turn 3?
I definitely felt like I had a shot up until I think about midway through turn 3 when Wetmore got to the bumper and just shoved me right into the 6, and that little shove right there just kind of broke that bubble, and it just kind of prevented me from getting a run off of 4. And that's, the original plan was to make a move on him off of 4, bolt to the bottom. I saw the 82 Minazzi was down there, so I was gonna try to go with him, but the momentum just, like you said, it was just not there. And yeah, I did what I could. Thomas and I were working together that whole last restart. We were in the same voice call, and it was kind of like let's try to separate ourselves and then just kind of duke it out from there. And that's what I was planning on doing, but yeah, just no momentum off of 4.
Well, you head into the round of 16. You're tied with 9 drivers, including yourself, at 2,000 points. That's the reset for drivers who have not had a win yet this year. But even up to Agnell Phillip, starts 9 points in front of you. You feel like you can outduel the 15 other drivers, at least to make it to the round of 12 at Darlington, Kansas, and Bristol?
Maybe. I mean, Darlington's probably my worst track on the entire service, but Kansas and I think it's the Roval after that, right?
Bristol.
Bristol. Yeah, I'm okay at Bristol, but yeah, Bristol and Kansas I'm okay at, so I'm pretty sure I would say at minimum maybe like around a 12 driver, but I don't know from there, but definitely feel like I'm at least around a 12 guy. If I survive until Talladega, I know that's going to be a good points day. But yeah, I mean, hopefully we have a lot left in the tank, but we'll just have to wait and see.
Wait and see is what we're gonna have to deal with. Hey, bad days from one person could mean good days for you. What is it? Another man's trash is one man's gold, one man's treasure. Felt like
something like that.
Yeah, something like that. But
something like that.
Hey, you were this close. If it was the Talladega, start finish line, you might have gotten Thomas at the end there. So
yeah,
that could have happened, man. But hey, doesn't matter. You're in the playoffs. You're there. We're excited to see what you do in that 79 machine in the playoffs. And once again, congratulations on the second place finish here.
Yeah, thank you. It's been a while since I've been here, so really happy to talk to you guys again.
Not a problem. You take care.
All right, you too.
Well, Josh, this is going to be a fascinating playoff field. I know you've been hard at work behind the scenes getting all of those results in, and it was kind of what I assumed, that Eric Papineau was the final driver to make it in. Steve Tucker was the second to last driver, and Tom Wetmore clinched midway, well, literally at the drop of the green flag, he clinched. So pretty, when it comes down to it, nothing changed. No results, no positions changed, aka no one got in who was at the moment out heading into this race.
Our exact same 16 that we were talking about coming in are the exact same 16 that we'll talk about when we begin the Full Throttle Real Sim Racing Cup Series playoffs in 1 week at the Darlington Raceway. Now you'll notice everybody's points reset to 2,000 except for those top 7. 3 points added for each additional win that the drivers got on the season. So Cato, Casto, Lariah, Harris, and Harris, all with 1 win, have a bonus points of 3. Thomas George now with 2 wins. Matt Danson with 2 wins. They have bonus points of 6. The Diagonal Phillip leading the way, 3 wins. He has 9 bonus points to begin the playoffs. But Dylan, we go from wide open as fast as you can go at the Daytona International Speedway to a track that, not exaggerating, you have to tiptoe yourself around. It's the Darlington Raceway. 16 playoff drivers are gonna have a dance with the lady in black, and boy, does she know how to tango.
There's not many tracks that have multiple nicknames, right? The track Too Tough to Tame, the Lady in Black. Some people just call it Darlington Raceway. Who are those people? But that's going to be a lot of fun. This track is 1.333 miles long, egg-shaped. Makes no sense, but it's a lot of fun. I'm excited to see what happens at that track. You usually get a good battle every year there in every series. So looking forward to seeing what drivers do get to victory lane and who clinches their way, if anyone, into the round of 12 with a win there. I don't just see a player or a driver, about to say a player, a driver that is in. I don't just see them being the only ones to win. You still got drivers like Landon Mills. You still have the odd appearance from Kevin King. You have drivers who will make appearances that are not in the playoffs that could win multiple races in the remaining 10. And one last nugget I'll give you before we end this broadcast. Thomas George, with that win, yes, his 8th win in RealSimRacing Full Throttle Cup Series competition. That was his 218th start. When we get to Phoenix for the final race of the year, if Thomas is in every race for the remainder of the year, Thomas George will be the all-time race leader in Cup Series competition in RealSimRacing.
We got a long way to go and an entire playoffs to fight before we reach that championship finale in Phoenix. But we hope that you'll join us for the start of the RealSimRacing Cup Series playoffs from the virtual Darlington Raceway. That is next Monday night, September the 4th. As always, right here on RaceSpotTV at 9 p.m. Eastern. But that'll do it for our coverage here from the virtual Daytona International Speedway. And for my colleague in the booth tonight, Dylan Coyle, my name is Joshua Lee. We thank you for joining us from the virtual World Center of Racing and the regular season finale of the Full Throttle RealSimRacing Cup Series. Thomas George is victorious. He'll fight for a championship. We'll hope that you'll join us for the next 10 rounds and the finale of the 2023 Full Throttle RealSimRacing Cup Series live on RaceSpot. Until then, we're saying good night from virtual Daytona.